All right. Cool. Let's go ahead and get started then. So, hello everybody. Steve Manta. I'm pretty sure I know everybody, and thanks for holding out until the very end. I was supposed to go on Wednesday yesterday, but couldn't get that to work. So thanks for the flexibility from the data management program and all the summit attendees, summiteers, I guess I could call you. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about, or my topic's going to be something we've been working on since last year. It's more on the strategic side after some of the outstanding technical and tactical discussions we've been having over the last couple of weeks, or a couple of days rather, excuse me. And I'm glad I'm able to hear, a good portion of it. So now I'll be the first to say, in the midst of everything we're going through right now, how can we possibly talk strategically? I would say we can't really, but maybe someday we'll be able to again. So let's do what we can for now. And I've been telling folks, let's try to set as much sense of normalcy as we possibly can, and do what we can while we can. So all right. So the topic is how are we moving toward a smarter, more agile, and mission-driven IT environment. And I should say this was something that was kicked off late last year. I guess it was late fall, early winter, before all the current stuff happened, and we've been trying to kind of keep it going as in spite of all the things that have been going on around us and to us, and yeah. So it's like I said, we're trying to see what we can do while we can. And I would say too, this is about the next step in our evolution, right? And it's really what I'll be talking about is how we can use what industry calls a managed services model to better deliver integrated, cost-effective support for wildland fire operations. So portfolio rationalization, or rationalizing the portfolio, that's what we'll be talking about. And I want to just emphasize what I just said, that this really is about the next step in the evolution of the portfolio. Sometimes this is taken incorrectly when we talk about these things, like where somehow we're broken. And I'm very careful to talk when I talk to leadership about these things, especially this. This is not a we're broken conversation by any means. This is just okay, here's the current state of the portfolio. It's not in bad shape. It's in good shape in many ways. But what can we do? What's available to us technically, and where can we go next? What should we plan? What should we be planning for? So okay, what is portfolio rationalization? When I say that, what does that mean? Well, I think for us, it really has two key components when we talk about this. First, it's a strategic process, right? It's a structured process to assess all of our IT applications, where we can look at the whole portfolio and we can start to ask some hard questions, right? When we're looking at our portfolio, it gives us a structured, data-driven, rational way to answer things like, where should we be investing? Where should we be modernizing? Are there areas we can consolidate? Are there areas we can retire, right? Are there things that are not duplicative and that we could retire? Should we re-platform? And we can start to ask those types of questions and really go at them in a structured way, and not think about things individually, but as a totality of the portfolio. And I want to say too, we're not doing this alone. One of the things that we kicked off late last year was engaging with the chief technology officer on the Forest Service side. So they've been giving us resources, and we've had a whole series of meetings with them. Jessica and team have been obviously involved in that, as has DOI through Chris Buzo and others, Shannon and folks. So anyway, so we make those decisions, right, that I just talked about. Those where should we invest, where should we modernize, consolidate, et cetera. And they're based on established and agreed criteria as well, right? So before we even start, we look, okay, what are the criteria we're going to use when we look at an application? And those aren't necessarily defined right now, but it would be things like mission value, technical health of the application, cost of ownership, how each system aligns with our architectural direction. And I would also say it's not just about cleanup, right? It's also about designing for efficiency, right? So how do we reduce technical debt, simplify the support of an application, depending on, sometimes applications are built quickly, they're difficult to maintain. Is it something that we could ease up on the maintenance piece, and then moving towards and along in the efficiency discussion, really moving towards a cloud native, service oriented or managed service operation. And what that really means is shared services, right, for mobility, scalability, and all aligned with actual field needs, right? So that's a key piece. And when you get at this right, if you do this correctly, you really are making smarter funding decisions, and particularly with the environment we're in right now, and you're creating a more integrated, interoperable environment that really does support operations and policy on the ground. So, okay, how do we make that happen, right? So I'm going to start with the second item from the last slide first, I think, just designing for efficiency, right? So how do we do that? Well, I mentioned it before, but we shift towards a managed services model. That means a cloud-based framework for delivery, maintenance, and evolution of applications, really into a dedicated cloud-based framework. So instead of each agency or program managing software alone, we manage and build applications with an eye toward how it interacts and works with the rest of the portfolio. If we do that, we can start to share infrastructure and share services. So things like databases, user interfaces, storage, it's potentially a long list. We start to be able to kind of share some of those services that's to me, that's really the promise of the cloud, right? And really we want to start thinking more of beyond cloud in terms of hosting and more towards these managed services, because to me that's really the benefit of cloud. That has real benefits, right? Cost, efficiency, things are lighter weight. And with that approach, we should be able to offload some items that we currently spend time, offload it, that we spend a lot of time on. So we can we as a group, when I say we, I mean Wildland Fire, we can start to offload some of these infrastructure and some of this maintenance to others who are set up and can do that for us, right? And what that means is we free up program teams to focus on mission outcomes, and we really can start to accelerate delivery while we're also improving our agility and our uptime. I think that's important, right? I guess I'll talk about this here in a second, but this idea of kind of freeing up our resources to focus in on other things. So this is not a perfect slide. I actually stole this from Gartner, but it's pretty good. It does get some key ideas across. So when we think of an application or a suite of applications that supports an operational area, we can really start to think in terms of a technical stack, right? So roughly speaking, like I was just saying, we want to be at the top half of that stack. When I say we, I mean Wildland Fire, FAM, OWF, others, where you really have to understand the need, like what functionality are we trying to put out there. Only we can do that, right? We are literally the only people who can do that effectively and quickly. No one else can do that. Now, as you start to kind of go down these stacks, there's other people out there who can do things like database maintenance, server maintenance, networking, all those managed services, some of those managed services, and we can have them do that to the extent possible. But you have to be architected in a way that's possible for them to do that. And it would be nice to be out of some of those businesses, right? And we're already doing this in a lot of areas. I know there are some applications out there now that are actually already doing this. And for those who are already doing it, being able to share some of those things with other parts of the portfolios is where we want to start to move to. And we can combine those things or services, right? And so maybe we only need, I'm making this number up, 6 or 7 databases in the portfolio, fewer dev environments, fewer languages, and we let others manage some of that stuff for us again, so we can focus on that end user and the mission needs. And really only we can do that. So, and then the second part is rationalizing from the user perspective, right? We know we can probably merge some of our applications and without losing any of the functionality, and start to slim down the back end of the portfolio at the same time when you start to do that. Okay, so why does this matter? So I said this before, but let me just reiterate again, because sometimes you say something and you think you got the point across, but not necessarily, right? This is not a we're broken conversation by any means. But I think we're at a really good inflection point, which is why I started to kick this off with some discussions with the Forest Service CIO shop in particular, because they had the resources and were able to help us. So the portfolio is really now cloud-based, right? And I think that really gives us an unprecedented opportunity to really take fuller advantage of the fact that we're in the cloud, right? Cloud offers a lot beyond hosting, and we could move beyond each application having a standalone stack, and really start to finally connect these applications into a unified, efficient, mission-aligned environment. And that's really critical. I mean, that's just a more effective, more efficient portfolio that is cheaper to run. We can deploy functionality quicker. I mean, it gives us all kinds of advantages, and it really does free up resources. How much time do we spend on the maintenance part of some of these things? And we know the mission support wants more speed, integration, ability to rapidly deploy new things. And so this rationalization effort really lets us retire. It also lets us retire what's not working, right? So we can consolidate things that are redundant. We can modernize what's essential. We can really start to think about, okay, investing in what's next. And it's not just about saving money, right? Although this approach does do that, it really is about aligning our systems, our data, and our spending with the mission. So, okay, here's kind of where we are, I think. So like I said, most of our IT portfolio now lives in the cloud, Skynet, AWS, DOI cloud, and that's great. But and many of us have had these discussions. The hosting part isn't really enough. It shouldn't be. We're sophisticated enough now that in my opinion, we are starting to act like a high-performing IT group. I think there's that old joke, when you go to a really nice restaurant, don't go in the kitchen. Well, we're all in the kitchen, so we see all the day-to-day stuff. But if you take a step back, I mean, we are doing a lot of really good things. I mean, today is evidence of that. I mean, look at some of the stuff we've seen. So this really is we have a chance right now to kind of start to think about how do we shift to these fully managed services, and it's a pretty long list of I think why we need to do it, but I just put a few on this slide, right? The approach really does simplify how we build, secure, deploy, and maintain IT systems. It really should lighten the back end tech load on our program staff and allow them to focus on other things. It gives us a way to quickly replace redundant, lower value tools. And we can connect our core systems, things like dispatch, safety, field ops, into a much more seamless environment for the operator. And we've seen that in some of the dispatch centers we've visited. I'm thinking of some of the ones we've been out to in California, where they've got those more unified systems. So that means fewer laptops open, fewer workarounds, cleaner lines of sight into how and where our investments are going. We're putting a lot of capability out there. There are a lot of applications, a lot of information, a lot of technology out in the field right now. And I noticed this last year on a couple of the incidents I went out on just day trips. You walk into some of these IC tents, and there are a lot of laptops open with different applications running. And it's really, I think, unfair to ask the IC or the folks in the planning tent to really act as the fusion platform for all that stuff. And it's only going to get more, right? We're only putting more and more stuff out there every year. So we don't want to end up with 25 incident applications. So you're in that IC tent, and they have 20 and some laptops open, each running a different application. So okay, so now let's just kind of go to the other half of the discussion, which we just talked about, which is just designing for efficiency, which is where do we invest? So we need a strategic process, a structured process to assess all of our IT applications, like I said, where we can really start to ask some hard questions. And when we're looking at our portfolio, we really do have a structured, data-driven, rational way to answer those questions. Where should we put our money? Where should we really be thinking about modernizing? And how do we prioritize those things? Are there areas where we can consolidate, retire, re-platform? This chart I got up here on the slides. It's pretty simple, but it's an interesting chart with an X and Y axis. And actually, that X and Y axis that are on their business value and technical fit, those actually have been proposed by the CTO in some of the conversations we've been having. Okay, so how do we take this forward, right, from where we are today? So we start I think that the first thing we're going to do, so I'm looking to the left. I'm sorry, I got my slides up on another screen over here. So we start by establishing a clean, authoritative application inventory. And we've got that in tools like Irwin and Edge. But really, how do we define the portfolio? How do we bookend it, right? Seems like a simple question. I think most of us who've been involved in the portfolio side know it's not quite that simple. So get a good, clean definition of what actually is the authoritative inventory of the portfolio. And then and we've done this before, like we've already made up some progress on this years ago. Emmy was part of this way back in 2018, whenever it was. We started to look for areas that just sort of naturally congregate, right? And historically we've called those things like lines of business subject areas, but just natural grouping of the portfolio where we can start to think about sharing some of these services. And it's things like fuels, weather, geospatial, resource tracking, those sorts of things. And we start to evaluate each application for mission alignment, actual usage, redundancy, and then we prioritize based on cost, security, user feedback. And I'm going to just talk here in a second, but we do have some ways to do that, including some software and some questionnaire tools that the CTO shop is actually helping us or providing us with. So I actually stole this slide. This is a slide that actually came from the OCIO and the CTO shop in their offices. And they actually have, we're in the midst of, I'm not sure what we're in the midst of right now, but before all this started came crashing down on us, they had actually given us some actual resources to do this. And we were in the process of turning this into an actual project. We were starting to look at things like charter. Well, in fact, we had a draft charter. The discussion was around how high up to the chain do we have to get this signed. We had a RASCI chart developed just to kind of talk about, okay, who do we need and what should they be working on? We had built out a questionnaire application to get kind of a light touch inventory on the portfolio itself. We had started drafting up project documents. We were taking this seriously as an actual project and defining it like that. So like I said, these are slides I actually stole from one of the CTO presentations from about 2 weeks ago. So just what have we seen already? Just sort of barriers and what we're doing about them. We do have some challenges to address, right? For sure. I already mentioned the one. Get the portfolio defined right now as it currently exists. Like, what do we want to call the portfolio? And then we're missing some skill sets just inherent within fire. Things like a cloud engineer and architect are the two that come to mind immediately. And OCIO had been kind enough to offer up those resources via TAS Group. So the plan was up to about 2 weeks ago was complete that light touch inventory. We had that questionnaire model built out, and then kind of launch into a 2-phase rationalization. We're going to do just a general scan followed by a deep dive on so we could prioritize kind of current state, and then start using a scoring matrix to guide some of the investment planning, and then strengthen some of that coordination between this team that we formed and the program teams themselves. And that was how we were going to get. The plan was then to get some more clear, actionable insight and just start executing, with purpose, as they say. So just kind of a final message, and I'll end it with this. But I really, the Wildland Fire IT portfolio isn't just technology. It really is the digital nervous system of modern wildland fire management. I mean, we know what happens when some of these systems go down. It's not pretty. So the phrase that we were playing with was through cloud native integration and application rationalization. We're shifting from fragmentation to force multiplication, something like that. And we're not just supporting operations, we're actually trying to empower them. So, okay, that's what I had. I can open up for any questions.
Rochelle, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciated at the beginning that, it's we have to step forward as normally as possible, but it's a lot of unknowns and uncertainty. And I think Emmy and I were just kind of chatting back and forth that, there's so many things that are unknown, so many things that we don't have control over, but there's also within fire kind of this glimmer of possibility, right? With this idea of a single fire organization and the Wildland Fire Intelligence Center. And I think that all of the work that we've done as a community over the past several decades, right? Like in the documentation that you're doing now with the work that you were just sharing with us, the work that we've done with IDME, like we're really well positioned that given the opportunity, we can describe and maybe influence what might be coming at us. And I guess I hold that as a hope even in the midst of all this uncertainty. So
I can go dark, if there's no other questions. Like I said, this is something that's at a low simmer at best right now, which is unfortunate because we actually had some great momentum going, not as late as even just a few weeks ago. And I was actually excited to do it because this is something we've talked about for a long time that we've been wanting to get at, and we really were at a good inflection point to really start digging into this as an initiative.